Hi everyone, welcome to this video and a series of videos on the signaling and dispatching systems of the SLS Railroad. This video is going to concentrate on the West Sage OS and the associated trains that work that area and some special circumstances that the dispatcher is going to need to contend with. First off, let's start with the most common aspect of Sage that as a dispatcher you're going to need to deal with and work around. That is the Sage Yard Switcher. And the Sage Switcher or the Sage Yard Master, however different crews call it different things, typically during a session, maybe twice, sometimes as many as 3 times, will need to go from the Sage Yard over to the steel mill, and vice versa, go from the steel mill back over to Sage Yard. So they will contact you for track and time. When they do that, as we illustrated in our track authority clinic, once the crew has contacted me and before I give them authority, I'm going to go ahead, if I can, and give them track authority. And I'm going to grant track authority for the sections of track that they are going to need. And it's imperative to tell them where they can and cannot go. That is the dispatcher's prerogative, and the crews need to understand that they may run into something if they go beyond those limits. So it's best to tell them they are authorized to enter the steel mill lead and utilize the OS far enough to get down onto the siding, and then from the siding go back into the yard. Of course, once they've called clear, we'll just go ahead and remove your track authority where you've given them authority, and you should be able to commence train operations across your main lines as usual. The next thing that is typically used, and we concentrated this also on our video about track authority, is the Sage Switcher using the Superior Paper Diamond. That is this little track right here that goes and crosses between the signal and the Superior Paper switch, and that diamond is not detected. However, it does have signals that are protecting the main line, so they govern whether or not the Sage Switcher or the switch crew can utilize that diamond. To give them the signals, you simply give them track authority, and it will be blue. As long as it is blue and with track authority, you cannot use the old main, and you will get conflicts if you try to do so. You can, however, use the new main, and if you line that up, as we showed in signals, and in track authority, you can route up onto new main. So you still have that as an option. One of the ones that goofs up more people than probably anything else is the ore trains and the coal trains. For simplicity's sake, I will illustrate what the coal train does that's backing out of the steel mill. In this case, the steel mill train would contact me for track and time and authority to come out onto the main to proceed eastbound. In that case, I would grant them track authority for the OS, and I would grant them track authority for the main. The reason being is because the main line is what they're going to pull up on, and they have no signal to give them authority any further. So I'm going to need to give them that track there, since they can assume that they can have that as long as I tell them they can. They would then take the unlock or the switches at West Sage into unlock, and they would maneuver themselves out of the steel mill lead, and they would maneuver themselves down the Superior Paper industrial lead far enough to clear switch 11, and then proceed eastbound up to the first switch, or the first signal at Sandy Creek. Upon doing that, they should clear their track and time, and if you click remove track authority and they are occupying the block, I'm going to remove that, and then I'm going to occupy my block. If you notice that once you've cleared a route eastbound and they continue to whoops, that was track authority, I don't want to do that, and they move, everything's okay, then you can assume that everything was done successful. However, if by chance this is the scenario you come up with, and I'm going to go ahead and put grant track authority in place again, and the train has come up onto the block. Again, I'm utilizing occupy block to give me to illustrate track track occupancy, since I don't have the computer hooked up to the signaling system. At this point, I'm going to assume that the train has come down. However, and I'm going to have to remove track authority, but I'm going to suppose that the occupy block was there when I removed the track authority. And in that case, if that was the situation and the train proceeded to go eastbound, like it is here, and I continued to move, and this situation cropped up, whoops, that was remove track authority. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to occupy my block, and I'm going to remove it. If you were stuck with this scenario, and again, I'm not too concerned right now about track length, but if you notice that they pulled away and their West Sage OS is still occupied, then it probably indicates that they've either left the unlock key in or they've left a turnout, which I don't have here. Again, I can't throw these because these are local controls only. It usually means that they've left the unlock in or they've done something else, such as a turnout is thrown against and it won't clear until the turnouts have returned to their normal state, specifically 11 and 3. And once that has happened and you've removed the unlock key, then it will go to an unoccupied state, but not until. A little more unusual situation that may crop up is the RDC, which would be stored up on this little spur here. And if the crew is assigned to the RDC and they need to come out, they are going to throw the switch here, which will route them switch 0, and then you will need to route them a turnout arrangement such as this to allow them to come down, and then probably crossover 13 to come down to the station at Sage. So they will throw that turnout again. I can't do that because I don't have the ability to throw that turnout right now, and it is only a turnout that is controlled from the fascia itself. So last but not least, probably the most rare occurrence is a train that would be going and utilizing probably just a locomotive that would be utilizing the back leg of the Y. In that case, you would simply turn the routes, give a signal, and the crew would go onto the first portion of the reversing block and then have to throw the reversing block lever on the panel to continue on. That would be both for that direction and for that direction. So both are going to be that way, but that's a very rare circumstance that you're probably going to be have to deal with that. That would usually only be during a snow session in which they have to turn the locomotive or the plow around. So it's probably something that's a rarity that will occur. One of the last things that happens is that the trains need to come out and switch using the the Sage Yard station lead. In that case, that is a local control, but it is not within the West Sage OS. It is its own control, and when it is in local control, the entire Sage siding will show as occupied. One of the operating scenarios that you have to keep in mind is that every time the crew comes in and occupies the block, such as we are doing here, and occupies onto the siding, once they've done that and they've cleared this or they're still on it, if they've backed into it, if you've given them a signal and they unoccupy that or they go all the way in, they still, as long as they have a signal, they're still okay to use the block, but notice it goes back to a halt state. Well, with that being the case, they no longer have authority to use this section of track because the signal has dropped. So you can do one of two things. You can either give them track authority, or you can give them a fleeted signal, which will give them basically a reoccurrence of upgrades, so that as long as they are going in and out, they can utilize that section of track. What I see crews do quite often is they will just go past the signal thinking that because they are using this switch over here that they have the entire OS. That's not the case, because this turnout could throw with them not on it at any time if I decide that I need to throw it. So if I needed to turn that there and run something down, they would need to have authority to come out there. So it's a matter of interlocking control. You own the entire block as a dispatcher, and they would need to request the authorization to come out. So that's just some of the things to keep in mind. If you have any further questions, feel free to contact us and ask us, and we will do our best to answer them. So with that being said, we thank you for watching and have a nice day.